a studio like this, a lot is unique. Skywalker Sound has just the most incredible recording facility I could imagine. I was inspired, I think, by the music tradition that we have in classical music since the time of Bach. He wrote the Well-Tempered Clavier, which is preludes and fugues in all the major and minor keys. And then we had Chopin, who wrote his 24 preludes, and all kinds of other composers. As a young composer, I decided to join that club and write my own set. It was just an interesting process of assembling them, trying to figure out how to produce a set of 24 where each sounds different. It takes a lot of mental energy. You are trying to listen to every note you're playing, but not just that, more like every phrase, every section. You're kind of trying to listen on multiple levels at once. And then, of course, when you have the opportunity to go over something multiple times, you're really just kind of trying to maintain a feeling of performing. Even though you don't have the live audience, you still get the best results, the most authentic results when you record as if you're playing a concert. And then the piano sonata is one of the most essential subgenres of classical music. And it was also interesting because there is also a technique used in some sonatas and other pieces called cyclical, where you take certain themes and you kind of work them throughout. And so in this sonata, I sort of combined the regular sonata allegro forms. It almost felt like putting a puzzle together. A sonata is really about structure, and so putting something together that made logical sense and also spoke with passion and something special. I believe firmly in the principle stated by J.S. Bach. He said that the primary goals of music are to glorify God and to refresh the human soul. I think that's absolutely 100% correct, and so I want whoever listens to this recording to be refreshed by what they're hearing. How you attain that in music is you have to connect with the music yourself on that emotional level. And then when you, as the artist, are convinced in what you're doing, the audience, whoever listens to you, will also be convinced. And the beauty of music specifically is how you can share an experience. You can play the piece and experience the same thing that the people who are listening to you experience. I think I most appreciate how it's a group effort. It takes a village, I think, to produce something like this. And so I just really appreciate how everyone came together, pooled their talents, and we did our best. And I think by God's grace, we got something good.
Hello, Classical Archives audience. Today it's my great privilege to be speaking with Talon Smith, a remarkable young American pianist and composer, about a new album he has coming up and about his artistic genesis and about a lot of other topics pertaining to piano. And it was nice of him to bring a piano along just for the backdrop, just to let us know what he does. But in any case, before I start talking about your background and approach to music and composition and other topics, I just wanted to be sure that we led off by talking about an album that you have coming up, which actually will be available on Classical Archives for listening. But you mentioned that Navona is the label, right? Very nice small label.
That's right. That is. And first, I wanted to also say thank you, Barry, for having me. And I'm enjoying this opportunity to have this conversation with you and share with your listeners. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
So, what can you tell us about what's on the album and whatever else you want to say about it?
sure. The album has my Opus 1 and Opus 2 compositions. My Opus 1 is a set of 24 preludes for solo piano. My Opus 2 is a sonata, also for solo piano, written in the key of C minor. And yeah, it's my first recording. It was a really, I would say, I had a great time recording it. I had a great team of people to work with, wonderful talent, and very grateful for all that. Yeah,
Terrific. And no, we're really looking forward. I'm looking forward to hearing more of it. I know in the recital at Carnegie of yours that we went to, we did hear your sonata. Was it the
that's
first
right.
sonata that you played? Yeah, it's a really a remarkable piece. It really is.
Thank you. That's very
And
kind.
sure. And both my wife and I, when we were at the recital, were very impressed by some of your unique piano approaches, such as I mentioned this to you before we started recording, your ability to bring out, not only bring out interior voices and things like that, like in the Chopin you played, but also to have them kind of take on a life of their own in terms of standing out both orally and also, crescendoing and decrescendoing and really taking on a life of their own. So,
Thank you.
so I don't know how you do that, but you do it. So, yeah,
Thanks. I guess it
sure.
kind of just starts with the inner ear. What are you hearing? What do you want to hear when you're playing? And then you work it until it happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about your early life and your family and also when music first came into your life? What can you tell us about that?
Sure. Um, Music first came into my life when I was 4 years old. My mom, when I was growing up, she wanted to see what my interests were, what I might be wanting to do as I got older, what I'd like to pursue outside of just regular school and all that sort of thing. And so, there were different things like sports, drama, and music I took to. And actually, my first instrument was not the piano; it was the violin. When I
Really?
was, as I said, I was four. What's that?
I just said really, that's all.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, I started when I was four with the violin. Shortly after that, I was in a local children's choir. And then when I was five, I started piano. And I would say the piano stuck. I don't play violin anymore. I think it's a lovely instrument. It would be kind of fun to still be able to, but it's been a few years. I'm not sure that I could. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. Mhm.
And who did you study with, both at the beginning and are there other people along the way you'd like to let us know about?
Yeah, absolutely. My first teacher, his name's Brian Hammonds. He's a local teacher in Fresno, California, where I was born and raised. And I would say, you know, in in my estimation, he remains one of my most important teachers because what he taught me was to love the instrument and to love music. And I've carried that with me as I've progressed to other teachers who perhaps were more demanding. You actually need to, do a better job and that sort of thing. But because I had the foundation of loving music, loving the instrument, I was able to stick with it, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I've been grateful to work with a lot of teachers over the period of time that I've been studying, and you learn something different from everyone, which I think is the benefit. So I mean, I can think of lots of different teachers where I still utilize elements of what they taught me today, just from many different sources.
Great. And did you attend college or conservatory somewhere that you'd like to mention?
I've studied privately, actually, but I have worked with teachers who do teach in conservatories. Professor Kevin Kenner, my current teacher, Eduardo Salim, who teaches at New York University. Um, but I never was a formal conservatory student, if that makes sense.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure. And I wanted to ask you too. I know that, well, actually, are there any pianists who have you like to listen to or who have influenced you in any way? Any of the so-called greats or anybody else for that matter?
absolutely. I would say, I would want to qualify because over time I've had my tastes have changed here and there. So, I mean, growing up, I may have listened more to one pianist or more to another. Um, if you ask me today, I would say probably the pianist I look up to the most is Joseph Hoffman. Um, and I think what I like about his playing, many things, obviously, impeccable technique, beautiful tone, and he just had a way of, he had a clarity of musical interpretation that still retained a sense of life and immediacy that I'm not sure I've really heard from many other pianists of any time period. I also am a big fan of Vladimir Horowitz. I think I tend to gravitate towards the pianists that have a freer approach, we would say, maybe a less, what we might even call a less disciplined approach. Not because it's not disciplined, it is disciplined, but it's a different kind. You know, it's a kind of where the most important thing to these artists is, um, I guess yeah, you know how there are sometimes when you're playing, there are certain rules, like there's unspoken rules that you're supposed to do. Like this is the way you play Baroque music, this is the way you play classical music. And that's true to an extent. But I feel like these pianists were able to look beyond the rules to the music, if I'm making any sense at all. And instead of being beholden to what was expected, they were true to themselves and created performances that we still remember to this day. Yeah.
No, that's a very good way of expressing it. It really is. I wanted to ask about competitions. Do you have a kind of an overall philosophy about entering competitions as a young pianist? And then I want to ask you also about, the Chopin competition, some other stuff. But generally speaking, one thing I'm always amazed at is is the level of perfection that's required. You got to go out through the different rounds, and basically you've just got to be, for lack of a better term, just perfect. I mean, how does one get to that point? As a performer.
Yes, when I hear a question like that, the humor part of me wants to quote Citizen Kane and say with great difficulty. But
Yeah.
no, you spend a lot of time, and I think something I alluded to earlier is, as far as the interpretation goes, really the surefire way to get the sound and um, the presentation you want is to have it in your mind first, to know what you want to hear, and then produce it. And that even has to do with, I think, more of the physical aspect of the hitting the right notes. If you're hearing them in your mind, you're more likely to get them. But as far as an overall philosophy, I think every pianist has their own path, to be sure. For me, I started competitions when I was probably 9 or 10 years old. And my first international competition I did when I was 14. And it was a very funny story because I was stressed out of my mind. I think I started preparing for it about 6 weeks before the audition. It was a live audition in New York, and I'm thinking there's no way. And it ended up going well. And, by God's grace, I ended up winning this thing, which was a big shock to me. But the point is, at that age, I was 14, when I, unexpectedly performed well in the competition, it actually gave me opportunities to connect with people that otherwise might not have been interested in what I did. Because I won this, people were willing to, I was able to put it on my resume to get into more festivals, to get into, other competitions, because they look at a resume, whoever's looking to admit you, and they want to see what you've done. So it was helpful. And through that, I started meeting people, my peers who also, play the instrument. I met industry professionals that I still have connections with. And so I guess what I would say is, in some ways, the biggest benefit of a competition is that networking. You meet people, you get your name out there, you increase your audience, and those are all good things. Because in the end, winning a competition is statistically, for any pianist, is statistically unlikely, but the benefit you do get is networking.
Okay, so overall, I guess would you think it's a good idea for young pianists to enter competitions, or are there too many other factors like personality and other stuff that come into play?
Personality actually does, I think, come into play. I mean, I never felt like I played my best in competitions. I felt like I played better in concerts because there wasn't the added pressure of the jury. But other people, they seem to have, stronger nerves and they can handle it. And that's great. I guess also there's, like when you're younger, I think it's a good idea to enter competitions because they push you to, as you were saying earlier, you push yourself to a level of perfection that you might not necessarily be motivated to find at that age without that impetus. And then I think there's also a point, and this can be different for every pianist, but there's a point when, if you want to be a concert pianist, you should play concerts. you know I mean, competitions can be useful, as I've said, but at the same time, you know I can think back to when I was preparing for the Chopin competition. The first one, the Bachauer competition, when I was in 14, and then the Chopin competition. I did the Rubinstein a little while later. And when you're preparing for one of those competitions, at least when I am, that's pretty much all I can think about, you know. And so if I were, it didn't really feel like I had anything left to give to performance, to recordings, which are also important, if that makes sense. I guess it depends on how you want to spend your time.
No, that's great. Also, what kind of particular things are there about the Chopin? I know you competed in the Chopin competition. I mean, a competition in which you play the works of just one composer. What kind of challenges does that present?
Yes, that's a great question. It's very unique. I don't think there's any competition really, not a gigantic scale competition quite like it. There are others, but the Chopin is the biggest one. And Chopin is he is actually, though, he's a composer that you can stand to listen to for days on end without any other composers because he's so good on the ear. Um, Chopin, I think, presents unique challenges because, I mean, we call him a romantic composer because of his time period and because of his harmonic language, but he was very classical in a lot of ways too. There's a very strong sense of balance. Um, there's a certain restraint too. I mean, if you think of someone like Liszt, it can get bombastic, very bombastic, and it's great and it's fun. But Chopin never really goes for that. Chopin's always a little bit, I don't want to say delicate because it's not always delicate, but it's more delicate. It's more nuanced, generally speaking, depending on the piece. And so the challenge can be achieving the full range of expression without overplaying. Um, and when I say overplaying, I just mean using too much gusto, not gusto, overplaying in the sense of sometimes forgetting the context. Maybe that's a better way to put it. It's intensity of tone rather than volume that you need sometimes. And that can be difficult to find.
Another thing I think that generally people overlook about Chopin was and correct me if I'm wrong, is he really was a lot of the time a really avant-garde composer. He was really at the forefront of a lot of stuff. I mean, people think of Chopin, they think, oh, very, very romantic, and things like that. But he's also really pushing it out there, a lot of the time.
That's true. He did. He had some very fascinating. I mean, my one of my favorites is the Polonaise Fantasy, and that's not necessary. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. My phone decided to do something, so I'm shoving it
Okay.
aside. Excuse me.
That's okay. I mean, and when I think of it, yes, there's some. I can think of some parts in the slow B major where there are some very unusual modulations, but they work wonderfully. Um, and then also just the structure of the piece itself, a polonaise and a fantasy. I mean, those are very disparate genres. You have a very formal dance, and then you have basically the rule is there is no rule, and you combine that. How? I'm not sure, but he did it really well. And then another challenge with Chopin is the singing line. He loved opera, Italian opera, and that comes through in his music. It's full of gorgeous melodies, which really are played best if you think of it as a voice and rather than a piano. And that produces unique challenges because the piano, you hit a note and then it dies away. Whereas a singer, they can sustain. And so trying to replicate that can be difficult as well.
It's funny, the Chopin concertos. I mean, when I first heard them, to be perfectly frank, my first thought was, okay, but it's not really as good as the Schumann. It's not really at the same level as some of the Mendelssohns, or even certain, well, of course, the Brahmses later. But then all of a sudden, it kind of hit me that I was being stupid because the Chopin are really remarkable works in their own way, and right up there in quality and emotional depth with the Schumann and the Beethoven, really. So, and
Yeah.
of course, there's nothing like Mozart. How do you like to? Are there certain that you especially like to play, certain concertos? Do you like Mozart or Mendelssohn or anything especially?
I love Mozart. And I'd like to play more of his music. I'm actually, I'm looking into working more of his music into my repertoire. That's a composer I guess I've had a similar experience with too, because when I was younger, Mozart, oh, it's nice, it's Mozart. But as I'm listening to it more, getting older, I mean, I'm not that old, but I have a little more time listening to it, and I think, see more of what makes him so great. There's so much expression in just a few notes. It's really uncanny. I really like Mendelssohn too. As far as concertos, I've really enjoyed the Big Russian concertos. I enjoyed playing. I performed the third concerto of Rachmaninoff a year or two ago, and that was great fun. And I think part of that just too is it's gigantic music, and you can really just go for it. And it's also beautiful, just beautiful. Very very heavily layered too. It's very polyphonic. Rachmaninoff isn't really thought of as a polyphonic composer, but he was, and the voices are going all over the place all the time, and it's really quite fun to just sit down and look at it.
Oh, that's really interesting. He's a obviously a terrific composer.
Yeah.
Yeah, which kind of segues into you as a composer. You know, um, when did writing your own music begin to become part of what you do?
I was around I was around 8 years old when I started writing it down. I I guess I improvised sort of before that. I enjoyed just kind of fooling around on the piano, I guess, and that's what improvisation is, more or less. And then when I was 8, my piano teacher at the time suggested that I should use a notation software and get to know it and start writing things down. So I did, And of course, there's nothing that I wrote when I was 8 that I would ever want anyone to hear. I would never want to show it the light of day. But I do think it was helpful, I think, getting into that at such a young age. I learned Finale, and I still use it. And I'm very sad it's been discontinued because I think it's a great program, but I still keep it on my computer and work with it. But yeah, it's been interesting for sure over time, just kind of watching how my ears changed, how my style not necessarily has changed, but is because I feel like it's always been me, but at the same time, part of just getting older and developing as a person means that what you write changes too.
You mentioned improvisation. Um, in writing your own sonatas and your own music, do you kind of is that based on, or is some of it based on improvisation, or
Yes, some of it is.
yeah?
Um, a lot of it, probably more than if I thought about it, probably a lot of it is actually. I tend to come up with ideas either through improvisation or just daydreaming. That's the other way. But the improvisations tend to stick in a way. I think when you are playing something and then you kind of can't get away from the idea, you just keep working with it. Then you realize it's going to be something, and then you usually can turn it into something you like, or at least that you don't hate.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when does it actually hit the page as a score? You know, what's that? What's the? I guess I'm asking, what's the process of getting from creating something and actually writing it down, if that makes sense.
It does. I think what usually happens is I might come up with a theme through improvisation. And then once I write it down, a lot of it's worked out more, less through improvisation and more just through kind of playing over and over what I've written, kind of thinking about it, ruminating over it. And then when I figure out where it needs to go next, writing that down. I guess I don't usually, in fact, I don't think I've ever completely improvised a composition. I think the compositions that are based off improvisation are just that. They're based off of something that came up through improvisation, and then I finished writing it down in a more analytical way, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you study or have you studied composition with anyone, or are you kind of an autodidact when it comes to writing music?
I never took composition training. I mean, I have in times past when I finished a composition, I would take it to, I'd play it for one of my piano teachers and they might have suggestions for me. I never took formal training though. No, I just kind of worked with it. I think the best teachers for composition are the great composers for me. I feel like I've learned the most just from listening to music I like, figuring out what I like about it, and then I don't know. There's just a sense in which the elements kind of get ingrained in the way you hear music, the way you feel about it. And so you're not writing what they wrote. Never. You don't copy. I mean, unless you're intentionally copying, but I don't do that. But you learn. You learn from the people who went before you, and then you kind of you find your own way. Anyway, that's my experience. I wouldn't presume to speak for others.
What kind of what considerations come into play in building a recital program that includes both your own compositions and other compositions? How do you think about putting together a program around that?
Usually, usually, a big question for me is do the pieces kind of follow a progression that makes sense? Like the mood, the key, even if they just if I played it without breaks, would it flow? And then when it comes to working in one of my own compositions, I just try to figure out how good is this composition? Should it close out a half? Should it kind of be stuck in the middle somewhere? And then the other considerations, how does it flow with the other music? Where does it make the most sense?
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
So let me ask what's coming up for you in terms of, well, both, I guess let's ask first of all about where concerts or recitals are that people could look forward to watching and seeing you play. Yeah, are things coming up for you that you want to mention?
Sure. Yes, I'm playing in San Francisco, May 4th. And as far as I know, that's actually because after that is summer and there's nothing in the summer. There'll be more in the autumn, and I don't have those dates in front of me now, but those are a few months out anyway. The one that's coming up is May 4th in San Francisco.
Terrific. And is that a
Yeah,
recital or a concert with orchestra or what is that?
that's a solo recital. I'll actually be playing the program that I performed in New York.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Okay, plans for future recordings as well?
Yes, in general, in theory. I'm working on some new compositions, and when those are finished, if I have enough music, I would like to record that, preferably this fall. We'll see what happens. I'm working on it. I've got some ideas, but sometimes I try. It's a balance because I want to be productive as a composer. I want to create music. I don't want to just not work on it. But at the same time, there can be, I worry anyway, that I'm pushing too hard and then I'm writing things that later I'm going to think I could have done better. So I try to do my best without dragging my heels.
Okay,
That's a balance I'm still learning to find.
okay, that makes
I,
perfect
I
sense.
should be able to get some things done. Sorry.
No, that's good. I think I should be able to get some things done is a good quote. Good quote from me.
Okay.
Yes, it's realistic expectations, and I'm sure you're not only going to get some things done, you're going to get some exceptional things done. So,
Thank you.
um, certainly. And segueing from that into something else, what kind of long range plans do you have? If you're thinking in terms of that, I guess it's the kind of classic, where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years in terms of composition and playing? Where do you think you will be or where would you like to be?
I mean, I'd like to do what I'm doing now, but more of it, I guess. I really enjoy I enjoy playing concerts. I like the interaction with the audience. I like the shared musical experience. I'd like to do more of that. I'd like to have a lot more compositions finished, and I'd like to have some more recordings of those compositions and other composers' music too. I'd like to record others as well. Right now, I guess I'm focusing more on recording my own things because I guess you could say I'm the only one who's playing them right now, so fine. But yeah, I love music. I love the piano. I love participating in I don't like to call it the music industry, but it is an industry. I love participating in it and meeting people of, just whether it's my audience or whether it's people you know, who professionals or whatever. It doesn't matter. I enjoy it all.
That's great. Um, One very kind of smaller level question to ask is, where did you actually record your upcoming album? Did you fly to the East Coast? Did you record it closer to home, or what were what were the logistics of that?
I recorded that album at Skywalker Sound, which is Northern California. And I tell you, it was, I can't imagine a better setting for a first recording. I don't know if have you ever been to Skywalker Sound, to that studio?
No.
No, it's really, really exceptional. It's on they have this gigantic studio. It's a big, you could think of a, like one of those, I'm trying to think like how big is that building? I'm not good at estimating square feet or anything, but it's tall, it's wide. They have these panels on the sides of the walls that with carpeting that they can adjust to work with the acoustics in the room. And then they have the little panels, the wooden panels with the blocks. Um, they have state-of-the-art equipment is what I'm trying to say, and also just a lovely, lovely team. I worked with Leslie Ann Jones. She was the one who recorded me and then performed most of the edits, and I worked with others too. And I would name them all if it weren't for the time, but really everyone played such a significant role. It was fascinating. What I would like to say about it is before I recorded, I always just kind of had in my mind that the most important thing about creating a good recording was the artist. Is the pianist any good? Because if they're good, it'll be a good recording. What I found is it is so much more than that. Everyone plays a role, and I wouldn't even necessarily say, I mean, it may be the artist plays the music, but you got to have the engineers who know how to record good sound, who know how to edit takes together, and they're just as important to the process. And I'm grateful for everyone who I got to work with to produce this.
Terrific.
It's a
I
team
remember,
effort. It's amazing.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I was just saying it's a team effort, and it's really quite something.
Yeah, I remember years ago, I interviewed a legendary recording engineer named Sedgwick Clark. Did you ever hear of him? He had done like the early recordings of the Guarneri Quartet,
Mhm.
and he's a very interesting person to talk to. It's a fascinating craft. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to have such a good.
So, um, we're kind of coming up to the 45-minute time block. Not that that's set in stone, but are there other topics or anything you would like to bring in? Any questions we didn't talk about? Please, this is feel free to talk about anything you want.
Well, I appreciate that. I guess I don't really. I wish I did, but nothing's coming to
Okay.
mind.
Okay.
But I appreciate the questions that you have brought up. I've enjoyed talking about them.
Terrific. No, I think it's been a terrific interview, and I know that our listeners will like and learn from what you've had to say, and it'll deepen their appreciation of your album when it comes out, and also, I'm sure, of your future endeavors.
Thanks.
So congratulations on everything you've achieved so far, and please keep that new music coming and the new recitals coming.
I'll do that. I appreciate it. Thanks again for having me on this show, and very much enjoyed it. And I hope
I've
everyone
enjoyed it very much.
enjoyed it. So yeah,
Thanks so much, and be in touch with any questions or anything, please.
will do. I appreciate it.
Okay, take care. Thanks again. I'll be in
You
touch
too.
soon.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Sounds
lot.
good. Bye
Bye.
bye.